That's a new one. Okay. Gotta stay on your toes. Lots of No. We just got that over. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:01. Any public comments for items not on the agenda? Okay. Vika, you have the TA report?
Yeah. The first thing on here is employment opportunity. It's been on here since mid-July. We're looking for 2 positions in the town right now, deputy clerk and code enforcement officer. They've been advertised. We've had very little to no interest. And then there is a memo that was added late last week on Friday. After sitting down with the code enforcement officer, a decision was made that he was no longer going to continue working for the town, where this actually took place on Wednesday. And that his last day was going to be the 5th. I have put an auto reply on the code enforcement officer's email with a similar statement. Sent out a letter to all the managers in the state to see if there is an interim that's available. Contacted the legal department to get an input on what the town can do currently. Just to see what other options are. I did also ask Bob if he would feel comfortable with having his name on that email reply. So,
Do you have any comments on that? Mark?
The memo that was signed, did you say this was added Friday?
I put this. Yes, on Friday into the packet or paper, because I wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with having it also come from you or have it, wording be changed somehow. It's a personnel matter as to the reason why this transpired the way it did, so I can't go into details unless it's in a public session. But I wanted this to be seen by you in case if you had input before it gets put out more publicly around the island that this is the situation we're in right now.
But it was on the one election packet.
Yeah.
So it's put out there online for the public.
Yeah, but I haven't added it to, any other notices. So if there are things that you want to change on it, let me know and I'll change it and then I'll properly advertise it on the town website, send out a text alert, whatever other means we need to do.
The problem I have with it personally, I can't speak for any other member of the select board. We did not authorize this to go out. We didn't see it before it went out. And the board appoints code enforcement officer, just like many other positions, and the board appoints or replaces the same position. So this was not an authorized board decision. That's the problem I have with that.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I would have to say the same thing. I don't understand. I don't know the details of what transpired. Here I am a select board member and I'm already hearing from community members about no code enforcement officer when we haven't even had a discussion. I don't know if the code officer resigned or if he was terminated, but I haven't received any information about that. And because the last action we took was actually at your suggestion and Jen's suggestion that we keep the code enforcement officer on as an employee, and the board made a motion to that effect. That's the last I knew. I've had concerns about the code enforcement officer since before I got on the board, but I'm not authorized to go out and terminate his employment solo. It's a board action. I don't know the facts of what happened, but I don't understand how you can prepare a letter saying that the code enforcement officer is no longer working for us and you can go off, we had the state code enforcement officer program director here a couple of weeks ago to get advice on what our options are. And so I just don't understand this whole process, and I'm very disturbed by it. And, the board is supposed to operate as a board. It's very clear what our responsibilities are in terms of this position. And I understood you were going to talk to him and come back to the board. And next thing I know, I see this letter in the packet, which was very surprising. And now I've heard from the community. So it is out there in the community. So I think this is a lot of difficulty that could have been avoided had we gone through the appropriate process. And there's a process for a reason. In terms of employee management, we can't just arbitrarily, one person can't just decide to, fire somebody. Just like if someone comes to me and says, there's a town employee, they're not going to work, they're not doing their job. I see them at the beach, I see them at the, grocery store. I can't just go fire that person. That's a board decision. So I am frustrated, disappointed, and puzzled as to how we are here tonight. And, I think what I need is information on if there's a problem, a specific change in the code enforcement officer performance. It'd be good to have some documentation on that. I'd like to know if the code enforcement officer resigned or whether we think we terminated him. And if we did, how did that occur? And then I'd like to know what the next steps are in terms, I don't think sending out a letter saying we have no code enforcement is a reasonable solution. And I think the board should be making that decision. And I think it's a little disingenuous to say, well, this was really just for your review. Because if you had sent it to just the select board for our review, that would be one thing, but that's not how we received this. And so I'm just, it's very disappointing.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, I agree with the statements before. We all agreed that we were gonna keep him on. Until we found someone else, and it just, to get this, I didn't hear anything about it, like, oh, he's terminated, so I'd like to know what happened as well, and this is not, shouldn't have been done like this, in my opinion.
I share some of the concerns that are just outlining, but I think the conversation that we need to have is a personnel issue that needs to be covered in executive session. And I would suggest that there are actions we can take, that we should do so after we have that session in executive session.
Thank you. The only thing that I will say is that no disrespect here, but yet you were not there and no, you don't know what's going on, and we plan to discuss this, and it is personnel, so like Bob said, it has to be discussed in private, and that's our next step. So Carol?
I'm not talking about the specific issue with the employee. What I'm talking about is the process that we didn't follow as a board of selectmen in an issue related to personnel. And the lack of information on some actions that apparently had been taken or I don't know. But the communication on this has been lacking, but it's the process that I'm having a problem with.
I understand that.
And so that to me is not an executive session topic. That is a public topic. Because this letter is in the public now, which says the Victoria Wood Town Administrator and Town of Sheboygan Island Select Board. I didn't authorize this letter, the select board didn't review this letter, vote on it and approve it. So I have a problem, whether it's the CEO or whether we're talking about Bennett's Cove or anything else, to have a piece of correspondence put out in public that implies that the Board of Selectmen has approved it, when in fact we have not. That's a process issue that has nothing to do with the specifics of the person. That is honestly my bigger problem.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
And I'll be very quick. First of all, in my opinion, the select board has not revisited the vote that we took at the previous meeting to keep the current code enforcement officer in the position. So as far as I'm concerned, that has not changed. That employment status has not changed. Second of all, the executive session we have on the agenda tonight is specifically the personnel, but it is not to do with anything that we've just discussed as far as this position for individual is to appoint a new planning board member. So first of all, my point is, it's supposed to be very specific about what you intend to use your executive session for, and that is not what we intend to use it for tonight. So if we need to schedule another executive session, I would suggest that we have one this weekend, Saturday morning or something, to talk specifically about the concerns of the position slash, what the concerns are. But in my opinion, it can't happen. Thank you.
I would respectfully disagree with that. We have talked about personnel issues of this type before with this exact wording, personnel matters. There's an issue of confidentiality in going into too much detail. I don't think we have any legal problems with discussing this issue, the specifics of this issue that are personnel related in executive session tonight. I would like to proceed with the discussion so we can keep things moving forward. I think there's a path forward here. We can all come together and move forward. I would like to have this conversation in executive session this evening.
Move on with that. Do we have to change the agenda? Do we have to?
I don't think the agenda, I would agree with Mark, it said specifically appointment to the council.
And you don't feel comfortable amending it to say personnel matters?
It does.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think it's prudent to try to amend an agenda the night of the meeting. I think an agenda should be posted 2 to 4 days before, 2 to 5 days before a meeting. And I don't think it's prudent to do that. And we have taken legal advice to the fact that we need to be more accurate and specific with our use of executive session. That's my concern.
Oh, I would say that probably this is my error in not specifically stating it within that agenda item. Where it is an executive session and the public won't be joining us. I don't understand what good it would do to have that specifically on the agenda ahead of time. And if this is so necessary to have this talk, which it definitely seems like it is tonight, then why don't we continue and get it done tonight? I am prepared with notes to discuss this in executive session tonight. Carol?
Because, and for me, myself, I did send out an email to all the select board members and ask for an executive session to discuss personnel.
Mhm,
And so I did make that request,
mhm.
didn't show up on the agenda. So I assume that was you declined. And I
No,
personally
I
feel
don't
like
say.
I need more factual information to inform any discussion that we have. And I have some specific requests for that in terms of, email correspondence. Is there a letter of termination? There's quite a few things that I don't feel like I'm gonna have in front of me tonight to make a decision. So
No, but maybe you would at least have some information that would help you in this
well, and
topic.
I guess I had asked for an executive session to discuss this, and so it is, again, a little, I mean, we opted not to do that for some reason, and that's your prerogative, but I don't think the agenda right now reflects a discussion about anything other than a planning board appointment.
Just to clarify, I did not opt to not do it. It was an oversight. I honestly thought by having an executive session, we could discuss it within there. My fault. I don't take total blame for that.
When I saw Carol's request, I saw the agenda on the same day. Carol's request, I believe, was on Friday, late Friday, for an executive session. The package was available, I believe, late Friday night. I assumed that this executive session was a response to that request.
Let's do that. Josh,
I'm fine. I want to hear more, but you guys have to say, so I'm gonna say I'm fine to talk about it in executive session tonight.
thank you. Okay, can we move on? Okay.
The next is the audit update. The fiscal year 22 audit draft is in the packet. It was received shortly after I had finished writing this memo. I have not submitted it to them because the last time I did, there were concerns about wanting to talk to an auditor. So I was not willing to sign off on it until the board okayed it. And then to make things quicker, going into the fiscal year 23, the auditors are going to come to the island for a couple of days instead of just one day, so then they can gather all the information in one time frame. So then it makes the process go a little bit quicker, in hopes that we can have that audit done by the end of the year, so we have it in time for the next budget session. Any questions?
Sure.
So I don't recall signing a contract for the 2023 audit.
The contract, it's just a letter that you send, they send, and I sign it and send it back to them.
Well, the board needs to review it, right?
To my knowledge, that has never happened. You appointed an auditor, and that's.
I guess I'd like to see a copy of the letter of engagement, and one of the things that came up for the 2022 audit, which is not yet final, was that they had said in their letter of engagement that it would be done on June 30th, and it wasn't. So I'd like to, so you're saying now that they're saying they'll be done by, sure, that's reflected in the letter of engagement.
More questions?
Is there action the board needs to take relative to the audit?
Indian Point survey. So attached, you'll see the survey that we did for the Cottage Road, Indian Point Road, and North Road, outlining what the property lines are. And so the next step is for, and so the purpose of this was to determine where the town lines were, so then you can properly figure out, if you wanted to, how to best replace the 5 parking spots that were lost down by the water. And so the next point is for the board to decide what you want to do this and how to move forward, and whether you want to have an agenda item to discuss it and make any further decisions.
Well,
Because the surveyor leave pins in critical locations showing what's represented on this document.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. So if there are pins there, I would suggest the next step is for the board or a subset of the board to actually walk the area and hopefully with some of the residents involved and just look at what's there on the ground as opposed to on paper. Hard to read in 8.5 by 11. I tried using magnifying glass and that helps. It would appear superficially just by looking at this 8.5 by 11 sheet that there is room to do a decent job with parking along the road there within the boundaries of the town's road right away. But it would be great to verify that by actually walking the ground and seeing pins. If pins are not there, then maybe we need to ask the surveyor to meet us there or ask the surveyor to drop pins so we can be certain what we're looking at. But I would suggest a site walk would be the next appropriate step.
Anyone else on the board?
Yeah,
Michael.
not substance. But when we get drawings from surveyors, it's happened then, if we get electronic versions. PDF with a full-size drawing, I can plot one too, just so it makes it easier to read drawings and stuff.
Thank you, Michael.
Question?
And, just a quick comment. First, I was very, select board and the town office, covering this done. We talked about this in the spring as being a useful step. And I know being surveyors, to work through the process, the fact that we're here to do this in advance, I think is a right step. I think the idea of sidewalk is a very good one, and we can work out a date. I will come back and be part of that. The other thing I would suggest that you could do now is to send this document to the property owner. And I will come to the office, a list of their email addresses tomorrow morning, just so, because to my knowledge, this has never been before with a survey. So this will be new information, that will be very useful. So I think that would be a positive step.
Thank you. Carol?
I would ask the surveyor to put his drawing on a aerial photo base map so people can orient themselves. Because this plan view makes it very difficult. And if we can't do that, Judy George can do it. So I think we should show this information with an aerial photo underneath so people can locate themselves. And that's what the folks who did the wetland survey down at the hook, that's what they did with their information.
Thank you.
The next one is bargain update, Army Corps and Brock Marine, who is the company that's going to be completing the rest of the 11%, are going to be coming out on Friday, October 6th for coordination meeting. They have asked Matt from CGC as well as myself be present. This is going to be to determine which days and what the process is going to be like when they do come to finish that. They're going to be on a 10 a.m. boat and leaving on the noon. So if there's 1 or 2 board members that are interested in going, that's going to be when the meeting takes place.
I will try to attend since I think it could affect the stone wall project or be related to that. So it seems like somebody on that project should be there.
And Bob,
I'm not working, I can be there too.
you can be a sub.
Okay.
Otherwise, we notice it as a meeting.
Oh, okay,
You can notice it.
whatever.
Doesn't matter.
Okay,
One you can't go, I'll bill it.
thank you.
And it's Cove, so I have not received anything formal like I was asked to do from Coley, but I did, meet with him. And he is going to provide, an updated, plan, for providing concrete planks to temporarily help with small improvements while the town works, to figure out what the, longer term solution will be. And then he said he will get to me, or he will get me that information within a week or two. Once I have the updated information, then I can proceed with, contacting you with those details, to see where it stands permit wise. I will share with you, any additional information that I get. In the meantime, what I did was I attached, the old, letter that he sent back last September with the initial suggestions that were discussed at the last meeting.
Anybody have any questions? Okay,
Next is the treasurer's report. So I'm not gonna read through the whole entire thing, but checking and reserve account are both have good balances in it. The expense and the revenue report is shown for August 2023. We were experiencing significant trio issues. Once again, it seems to be typical of this time of year, which is why the budget column does not have the numbers that were adopted at town meeting. All of the numbers were being duplicated and tripled, and so I do not feel comfortable moving forward the budget until those issues were resolved. They actually got fixed yesterday, so at the next reconciliation, those numbers will be present there. Any questions?
Carol,
Have you given us a 2023 reconciled budget? Do you have that?
You received reconciliation through June of 2023, yes.
Could you resend that to me, because I couldn't find it, so.
anyone else?
The only other thing in the reports was the sheriff's report, which did come into us until after the last meeting, which was at the beginning of the month, probably the last couple of weeks of what took place before Bob mailman was done for the season.
Any questions on that? Okay. Thank you. And we'll move on to regular business 23-078 to hear an update from the broadband committee about relocation of the central office and take any necessary action. In the packets, you have a letter from the broadband committee. Michael, are you? The representative?
Well, to say.
Michael, do you mind standing up closer to the owl?
The other owl over there, stand on that was.
Thank you. That is the podium.
Like here?
Perfect.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, what we would like, from you tonight is the approval location. Talked about it in general terms, quite long, but this is very specific now. It has to go to also to special exception for the board of adjustment appeals and site plan review. So anything you do subject to that, of course, but, I would feel a lot more comfortable going to them with the backing of the board to say, okay, this is where the town wants to put the facility. Then, if that somehow needs to be adjusted because of some site plan reconsideration, well, that's another question. But I don't feel comfortable just going on myself, or just a committee. Our job is to recommend, not to assert things. And I guess the question about the memo.
Two questions. I think you said that you're going to protect it from a car accidentally moving forward with boulders as opposed to pilings.
That's a suggestion, I think it would look better.
Yeah.
If there's some regulation, something.
And the only other question I have with this limited sketch, will this limit or be endangered by the bus backing up into that, and school bus backing up into their normal parking spot? It looks like it's going to be clear.
I think it's clear, but they back up on, they're really on the target when they back up, and we're off it. And Peter, sorry.
Anyone else? Carol?
So I just, in the memo, I wasn't clear. Where you say a firm decision on the point would be very helpful as we move towards construction. And I wasn't sure if you were referring to what the facilities committee is considering for power in terms of the public safety building, and if you were looking for some direction from us. I didn't understand that.
Well, yeah, I think basically, we've been routing on this to the facilities committee. And in order to make solid plans, even if we don't execute them right away, we would like some kind of firm decision on whether we're going to run power from a public safety building or whether we're going to need a service. And if we run power out from public safety building, whether we need to have our own generator or whether it can be feedback on the generator instead. Because it's and that came from our meeting Monday night, and raised the point that it would be nice to have somebody not just be two committees with goals, but let's have somebody over top saying, okay, this is what we're gonna do. I guess that's you guys.
So what is the specific question?
The specific question is, do we get, two questions? Or one and a half? Sorry, do we have our own service in CFP, or do we run power out from the public safety building? After the power is upgraded there. And second, if we can run power safety building, can we use the emergency generator that's there for power outages, or do we have to have our own generator? I did hear from Vika that an electrician had looked at the generator and concluded that its rating were adequate for our purposes, to include our operation. But
And I guess the part that I don't see is what is the fire department is talking about in terms of the cell phone tower upgrade and how that is related to this. So not being a power person, I would leave it to these two committees. I guess I don't know how to answer the question as a select board member. I recall that we had a presentation last meeting, and I think that included a power upgrade, am I right?
So for the fire,
Yeah.
yeah, for the new radio system, I believe there is a new generator coming as part of that project.
No, that's not true. They said that if the generator was needed, they would
Provided.
provide it, but it has not been determined. You know, some people are saying that we don't need one, some people are saying that we are, which is, I think, to Michael's point and to what Beth mentioned, having somebody that's qualified enough to be able to look at all the projects involved and professionally determine whether that is adequate or not. Versus just, because there's been number of electricians on shebang, some of which said that the generator was good, some of which said generator was not, so it's difficult to be able to have an adequate answer to know how to move forward.
Mark,
I think the mom wanted to speak.
Probably doesn't want you to say your mom.
no, that's fine, but you gotta go up by the owl. Yeah.
Our biggest thing as a committee, I think, is what we have here is two committees, and you've already heard it from Michael. Michael attended our meeting in August, and we explained that we have in the budget, and we had recommended and you approved an update on the electrical upgrade and the monies are about $15,000. So that's there. However, now you have to look at a site and you not only have the conduit that needs to go across from the firehouse and up to the pole, which we had talked about in 2022, that was our plan. And don't misunderstand me. I am for broadband. I want us to work together. And that is where a coordinator needs to come in. Not only now do we have a site plan by Michael, and we had asked Michael if he would present it, get it to us, but the first thing I know is it's in your packet. Okay, it's all right. But what we need to do is have someone looking at this from a standpoint of overseeing, collaborating, having us get together. Do we share can we share the upgrade, the new 400 amp service with them? Can we run our conduit in the same trenching? When we presented our suggestion to you, our trenching was not even a budget number because we were going to have the town do it. In discussion with Michael, he was talking with Bo in doing this. So you see where this is all happening. You've got two committees that each work together, that I think want to work together, but we need to have somebody with expertise to say, here is the site, we can run the conduit of both parties in the same ditching project. You've got a building now with the fire department that's going in there. There needs to be an expert looking at this in the way that's needed. And as far as I'm concerned, in my notes, the building committee in 2022, the generator, no, I'm sorry, in March of 23, we had in our architect brought down an engineer. Bob, you were there. He looked and said, yes, if you add anything more onto the electrical, you're going to have to upgrade it. So we know that. However, he said you need to go to the people that have the generator to determine what your needs are. And we have not done that yet because we were still working on our plan of running the wiring. And I think my understanding is broadband doesn't get off the ground until August of 23, of 24.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. And this push to get this ditching done right now, there's things that need to be organized in this area. And we need an expert to be saying all the things I just stated. Yes, you run it in the same ditch. I know you were concerned, Mark, about having it, make sure that it ran across and it didn't disturb the parking area. We can't keep going back and forth. We want to work together, but there needs to be a coordinator in this plan. We have a design team. We have the architect that's helping us with the information on our end, but it needs to be coordinated. This is something about being effective and cost effective for the town. what's the right answer? Do we go on our merry way separately? Or are there things that we can do together? So that's my concern.
Do you have a coordinator?
Do we have a coordinator for both? No, but I think it would be wonderful if Mark had maybe stepped forward and kind of looked at these things and suggested what we need. As far as, do we need an engineer to look at this site and say, remember, we have a septic system here now.
Yeah.
We have a slab that needs to be in. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can't keep marching separately.
I have a couple of things, if I may, very quickly. Where do I start? I'll start with the electrical system. I think, if I may, I think David Vernon might agree with this statement. When the school was remodeled, when the elementary school was remodeled, there was an electrical engineering firm engaged to make sure that when that 400-amp service finally got approved, that everything was going to be ample, well-designed, and working well. I think we're going to need to engage, I think I said this at the last meeting, an electrical engineering firm, and have one of those individuals look at the building, look at what we might be doing to the building short term, look at what we might be looking to do with the building long term, and then look at the broadband situation, and then help with the generator company assess that 50,000 watt generator, see that it will handle everything, not now, not next year, but 10, 20, 50 years from now, maybe 50.
Well, we did have an engineer on the 400 amp upgrade saying the need, but that was before we needed to move the site.
Yeah.
So now we've got more things.
And I talked with Bo quickly this afternoon about the proposed site of the broadband recommendation of I forget the name of it, what you call it. And I asked him his opinion, and I had one about where that trenching would be happening and where the near future trenching of the 400 amp service hopefully would be happening, and could that be compatible, especially when you get near the building. We feel that it can be. We may need some further recommendations from Casco Bay Electric. I think will be the main electrical contractor. Is that accurate?
We are waiting for their response
Yeah.
right now as to where they are with the material. There's still that material, but as you know. And also they talked about having it on their schedule, the end of the fall. But I hope I'm making it clear that we just can't keep marching with our separate ways, and you approve a site when we might need to be running a line separately.
It's very clear to me, and I'll be quick, even with our road paving project, I may have dug in a little too deep with Herman and others, trying to do the right thing. I think we did okay, but we recognize that sometimes a project manager might be needed. I don't know if this is a case or not, but I'm always just a text away. I can come up and give my opinion, but when it comes to electrical, I don't know electrical.
We need to be told what the right thing to do is, what the town to big and how cost effective we might share this.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I think it's 3 committees or 3 entities that need to be involved here. It's the fire department and their, we'll call them constituents in this case, their partners in this expanded communication project, which includes Cumberland and Yarmouth. But I think each of those 3 parties, the building renovation, broadband, and the broader fire community need to be involved in the conversation. An engineer, so an involvement means defining in writing the requirements of your equipment. what are the specific electrical engineering requirements of the equipment involved from each of those three parties. The engineer needs to look at those three sets of requirements, and then the improvement of it and the trenching should be coordinated for all three of those things by the architect firm. That's what architects do. And I think, Dave, you're on that committee.
Dave, you can help with this because he is thankfully on our committee.
Step up to the owl.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Dave Runner. Married with that and others. More said it right, a similar situation at the school where we had a 200 amp service, and then we left quite a bit of debate whether we would upgrade to the 400 amp or not, depending on what future needs there might be in terms of higher amperage equipment, and in the end, we did decide to continue some money to do it. This situation is a little more complicated because we do have the three somewhat independent projects running now. So our committee has engaged Port City Architecture. They're using Haley Ward as mechanical and electrical subcontractors. Very capable. We've done a preliminary assessment on the building itself, just related to our project and future renovation of the town office. Depending on how the fire department works or doesn't work with that building. But they have not been notified about the broadband project or the communications project. They're certainly a capable firm to do the analysis. It's not really within our current scope of work, so we have to probably have to serve it on their end, and we have to have some information for that. I don't know that we're necessarily volunteering to lead that coordination effort. But I guess we have the resources on our team or the professional consultants to contribute to that.
Bob,
One of the extra costs of the engineering, I would suggest should be split between the three parties. The fire project, the broadband project, and the office renovation project. And actually, maybe it's just between two parties. Maybe it's not the office renovation project. If you've already done your engineering, it's the other two things that are wanting to come together. But just for the sake of getting it done, maybe just split it three ways, whatever the engineering did, and keep the thing moving.
Karen,
I would suggest, since the facilities committee is dealing with facility property in general, they should be the lead committee and communicate with the other two groups. In terms of who pays for it, I think the town of Cumberland has come and town of Yarmouth have a plan to, which maybe you're not aware of, as the facilities committee, to do an upgrade to the tower, which includes a new generator and a building. And so I think what you need is a site plan that has all of these proposed projects on it, a single site plan. Seems like you guys have the contractors on board already to could potentially do that. I would suggest you get an estimate of what it might take to put together a site plan that would include all of these projects and also evaluate the electrical questions that are out of my wheelhouse. And, you know, I think as the town, we could potentially find a way to pay for it. I'm not sure. You know, I'm not sure. I think I'm not sure. The first thing that is all these different committees, I can't speak for the board, but I think the first thing is to, for me, it makes sense that the facilities committee, which is dealing with the town property, would be the lead committee to make, kind of coordinate. And then you have technical consultants on board that you could use to help do that, and how we pay for it. It's a second question, but it would be good to get an estimate to at least get that much. Because right now we need one map that shows all of these things on it, so we make sure they're not going to interfere with each other. And I don't know enough about this cell phone tower upgrade, but it's a pretty substantial electrical upgrade from the looks of it. So it might be that there's some benefit to, you know, Cumberland and Yarmouth are paying for that. We're not paying anything. And they might, you know, maybe we can all work together and maybe it would ultimately be less cost to should be even. So that's my suggestion. I would just like to ask, broadband too, though. I did ask the question in your meeting, and is there monies in the grant that if you need a generator and you needed any of that electrical, is that included in the monies for the grant?
Yeah, we could. We could run our own service. Our own backup generator.
And I guess I wasn't really talking about the cost for the infrastructure. What I was talking about is the cost for the engineering. I understand. I just wanted to hear that. No, okay. But I mean, I think the engineering is not a huge cost to get everything together. Josh?
Just thinking about it, it might be beneficial and cost effective to have one generator to do it all. But at the same time, would it be better to just have it all separate so that you have one generator that multiple generators that if one fails, one fails and then it all fails or something, like, would it be better to just keep the entities separate? I guess is my question.
Probably it's a question for
Engineer.
engineer. Mark,
Well,
Yeah,
All right, were you done?
I'm done.
Very quickly, first of all, I don't have a problem with the first draft of the proposed locations and stuff. But I think your point is a good one. The applicant to the planning board and or the zoning board of appeals will be the town should be.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. The generator that we have over there right now is a really good generator that we got from a grant we started the town. It's a 50,000 watt 4-cylinder diesel generator. So that the engineers might not care, but the new generator, if we bought one, if we need to buy one, would likely be propane. Just to point out, thank you.
Michael,
Yeah, a couple more questions I'd like to make. Beth raised the question of coordination. She said she'd ask me for information at the honest meeting. I was given at that meeting Vika as a contact. I said Vika, this drawing and some other information. So a while ago, I guess it didn't get to the committee. And I'm sorry about that. The trenching question, that's going to be done on Axion's nickel. And they would have, I'm sure. I haven't spoken to Mark Willett about this, but I guarantee it was confidential with me. But I have no problem with putting the conduits that the town would need in with that. So a couple of conduits for the greatest service and one for the town's fiber connection, but also probably for the landline phone, which now comes in my area. There's no problem throwing that in the same trench.
I think that sounds logical, but it's an engineering question.
Well. What's the conduits in the trench is an engineering question? Come on.
I don't even think about making decisions about how many conduits can go in a trench until Lenny says yes.
I think I want all that trenches, yeah. I mean, the trench big enough for the conduits, rather than make.
If the trench needs to be 6 foot wide as a result, and that might change the decision about whether we want the trench in this location. But I'm saying, before we say, yes, we can dump all the conduits in there, let's get the engineering.
I've actually done that work, but.
so it sounds like that we need an expert to make these decisions for the town. Is that the direction everybody is agreeing on? And now it's up to decide who goes and contacts that person. Is that as far as which committee? Is that right? Rob, Carol, anybody?
I would suggest that the facilities committee has technical experts under contract. Explain what we're looking for. I think we need a site plan that shows all 3 projects to the best of our ability today. And then we might need some electrical consulting on kind of what coordinating, what not coordinating, and, you know, maybe get a cost for what that might take. I don't think we're talking a giant amount of money, but I do think in order to go for, I mean, Mark is right, this is the town of Big Island project, ultimately, all three projects are town of Big Island, so the town needs to, you know, prepare the materials that need to go to the board, so that's what we're doing. I agree, and so I think the money part, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but we need to know what it's gonna cost, and then frankly, if it's $2,000, I'd say the town can pay for it personally. That's up to the board. In terms of who pays for a generator down the line, that's a different question. That's my recommendation, so is that somebody from the facilities committee contacts the consultant and asks for that.
Is that something you guys can do?
You're looking at me.
Is there anything we can have to-
Yeah, I think it makes sense for our design team to work on this because we are under contract with them. And like Bob said, I think the architects, Port City architects should manage the overall site planning because there's other issues of, you know, locating the broadband equipment, you know, interfaces with access to the building, both now and in future, and parking arrangements and fire access around the building. So all that needs to be coordinated. Not as simple as digging a trench, right? You got to figure out where the trench is, where's the
Well, the town of Cumberland and Yarmouth are proposing to build a separate 8x10 structure, so maybe we should be building one structure to accommodate these projects, but I can't. So I think that's, and this is very much, and I would say, the preliminary stages.
Now, what might happen is the consultant team might come back with 2 or even 3 alternatives. One might say, just keep all 3 projects independent. And then at some point, somebody's actually making a decision, bring that back to the board. And we'll step up for you.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Could I ask one quick question?
Sure.
How will the communication happen in our opinions with the towns of Cumberland and the Arm to get them involved? How will that happen? Will that happen through the town administrator helping talk with Bill Shane and not Tucker with the fire chiefs, or because it's important that you're gonna engage the Arm and Cumberland in these planning and design questions and electrical, all of it. How will that happen?
Lisa?
When I spoke to Bill Shane, I mentioned to him that these were already concerns that the town is considering. And he said, when we have a better idea of where things stood, to let them know.
Okay. So you or we can help the facilities committee coordinate starting to engage young.
I am on the facilities committee,
Oh,
so
sorry.
I've been on every meeting from the beginning of the committee.
Thank you.
We all good?
Thank you.
So just to wrap it up, when that proposal comes back, I will bring it back to you and we'll need a motion to authorize that expenditure.
Great, thank you.
That, in that case, so you think of it as planning for this for the future. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if everybody's okay, we'll move on to 23-079 to discuss a request received from Alexander Joe Walker about removal of a stump on Cox Road and to take any necessary action.
So I had received a call from her and then followed up with an email asking if the Public Works Department could take a look and remove a stump that's right next to her barn. The tree had fallen there and, the town did not, do any of the removal or pay for any of that. But there was a concern of the stump being dangerous, so it was asked to be removed. I asked Public Works to take a look at it. When they went down there, it was determined that due to the close proximity of the building to the stump and the road itself, that they felt that a lot of the roots were very close to the building, and so Public Works didn't feel comfortable to hook up a backhoe and yank it out. Which is why it then is sitting in front of you as the road commissioner to provide guidance on one, what you would like to do, if anything, and two, if you have any recommendations of how to move forward. She did say that she can talk to Bo, who is going to be doing some work on her property to see if that's something that we could take care of, but the expectation is that it's a town expense.
Carol,
From the information somebody put together here, I'm just not clear. Is this stump on town property or private property?
The property owner is claiming that the stump is on town property. And the information that she provided in the email is the explanation why that appears to be so. It's a dispute that took place a few years ago about the building being put so close to the property line in the first place, due to some discrepancies on different lines. I was not part of that discussion, so I really don't know the details. But she did provide an explanation and a survey. And so at this point, I don't know how to proceed or what to proceed with without having some feedback from you.
So I mean, can you confirm that the stump is on town property?
No.
I think the other question is, what is the difference between a right of way versus town owned land? And then, for me, the other consideration is, do we want to get the town into the business of removing stumps in town rights of way at requests of property owners? If it wasn't next to somebody's barn or in their yard, if it was just out along the side of the road, I don't think we would be considering removing a stump when a tree came down. So if I drove down there, the stump is cut close to the ground. It's extremely close to the shed, which was located where it is in questionable fashion, and then given a buy, rightly or wrongly. But I'm not comfortable spending town money removing a stump in the fashion of a risky project. It just seems like asking for trouble, and I don't think it's a town responsibility. The history research, tree issues with neighbors in general. If a tree's on my land and a branch falls on Mark's land, Mark is responsible for clearing even though the tree roots or Mark. General problem, if it was to go further, obviously. Aware about it, but
Mark,
Yeah, I don't have enough information tonight to make any kind of, and my gut reaction is matter of town responsibility. It could be proven wrong. That's my first reaction. I'm not comfortable directing town administrator or the town resources to take care of this point.
And resources mean lawyer involved, is that what you're talking about?
I'm sorry.
You said town resources?
What I meant by town resources would be the town road crew, town labor, town equipment, town machinery, time and responsibility of the situation, which, you know, I think someone could probably remove that stump without tipping that building over, but I don't know what none of those routes might go, so I'm comfortable directing the town certainly tonight.
Okay. And then a question about why the building was so close to possible being on the property line, but we don't know, kind of thing. All right, so are we voting to not do anything? Are we tabling it? What do we do?
I don't think we need to take any action.
I don't think, in my opinion, anyone prepared to make a motion, so I'm not sure what tabling was choosing to take no action at this point. My
Okay,
opinion. You did.
all right, and let's move on. 23-080 to hear an update about the meeting with Shabig Transportation Company and take any necessary action.
Mark and Harold and I met with CTC members of the board as well as Matt. It was upon their request, and it was to start up discussions about short-term, long-term relationship, how CTC and the town can work together to make sure that coordinations exist and both parties are on board as far as the CTC parking area and the different agreements revolved around that. There was a discussion about having to be an ongoing basis. So a meeting was set up for another time next month. And I'll let Carol and Mark fill you in with whatever else that they would like to mention.
Mark?
Yeah, I think it's right. We tentatively set up a meeting for next month, but we feel that we need this board to be on board with us meeting with them once a month. Right now, we have a joint standing committee that is appointed by this board, and I think Jan and Bob are the members. Is that accurate? Correct. The joint standing committee came over from years of Cumberland, we were part of Cumberland. I was on it for a number of years with Donna Damon. And the purpose of the joint standing committee was to discuss and highlight and try to manage any concerns, mostly of the wharf agreement, which is Cousins Island wharf agreement between, back then, it was between the town of Yarmouth and the town of Cumberland. It is now between the town of Yarmouth and the town of Shabik. So the joint standing committee is very specific that it focuses on the landing of the ferry, the agreement of how the ferry operates, the size of the ferry, the trips, the restrictions of the of all that as it relates to the wharf agreement. the discussions that we started having and probably would resume having, I'm not positive of that, but I'm assuming so. Focus more on the Cousins Island Park, Blanchard parking lot. And the barging operations, which under a whole different set of rules and regulations. Called court decree. That's where we focused our discussions on, thinking that's probably where it will, target. And I would like to suggest that I think that it's a positive that the Sewage Transportation Company and the town of Sheboygan are back talking again, and I would like to suggest to this board that you may want to consider allowing Carol and I, appointing Carol and I, however you want to make it, to continue the discussions for this year. Do you have anything, Carol?
I'd make a motion that we ask Carol and Mark if they'd be willing to continue meeting with CTC for the balance of this select board year.
Have a second? Josh is the second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
No, we're supposed to vote or not. Doesn't matter.
Works. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Other business? I don't have anything. Guys,
Well, I just will have a short report to be gauges installed just before the hurricane on Fairness Cove Pier, and should be available online if it isn't yet launched momentarily.
you said it's January?
Yeah, but it should be up online. And that was funded by the Island Institute, a grant from the Island. And the climate committee, particularly Bill Dennison and I don't know, the spearheads there.
Many thanks for that. Bob?
I don't know if this is the right place to make this request, but I would like to ask that we add an agenda item at the end of the executive session, the possibility of coming back into public session, opening the owl back up, should we decide to do so after the executive session.
You don't need to do that. If you decide in executive session to make a decision, you come out of executive session, make a motion, and then proceed with the meeting.
Looks like we're covered. All right, now on to communicate.
There are two communications that were lettered. We have residents in Venice Cove. And then additional was received from that Ridgeway from CTC asking and suggesting that there may be another bike rack or some space dedicated for scooters for both, but they increasing for that down there.
I went down and looked at the bike rack yesterday. There are 12 slots in the bike rack, 6 from each side. There are 13 bikes in the bike rack and then a few more that is over where there wasn't room. Of the 13 that were in the bike rack, 3 of them had flat tires. At least half of them had evidently been there for a very long time. They're abandoned bicycles. We could put up a public notice that says please remove these within a week and then pull them out. One of them is chained with a chain that's and padlock and bolt very rusty. It's been there a long time. I think it's at least a part of the issue is abandoned bicycles as opposed to not in space. There were 4 motor scooters and one that pulled out while I was there, and they're just parking in pretty orderly fashion. I didn't see any problem with the way they were parking. But whether we have a designated area, I think that's just started up accidentally since people started having scooters. I think Harry might made a point that people are taking up less space and burning less fuel by taking those scooters down there. But it might make sense to actually designate a parking area, protected in some fashion from, I guess there's no traffic. Car, but I mean, the first step would be to deal with the fact that there are excess or abandoned bicycles down.
So should we add it to our next agenda? Okay. Okay,
You want me to ask Public Works to remove the abandoned bicycles?
Yeah. Might want to check, normally, I think those kind of things, the police department and the police department then offers them up if they're building this. I think we should get some advice. I don't know whether you could just go have public scan them out of there. I would suggest calling one of the towns and asking how they do it.
Or maybe call the sheriff's department.
Yeah, I think it would have been good to ask Melman while he was still here. Is he coming back at all? No.
Not until next year.
But they still have responsibility for it.
Yeah, we could ask the sheriff department. about
I
that.
didn't know.
thank you.
They can just be moved. Not thrown away.
Right, well, I just.
No, yeah, yeah. Yes.
The rule on it, wrong way.
The other communication that I have that I received, was just, an email from Tim Bain asking, about what Public Works is doing with the dirt roads. And whether it was the new equipment, and I said, yes, it was the new equipment, and just wanted to let the town know that it was an investment well made, and the roads have, the dirt roads have never looked so good.
Okay, positive. And then I had a communication from John Whitaker regarding the property swap. And we will just add that to the next agenda is my thoughts on that one. And that was the Brunel property swap.
Now county swap.
Yeah. You guys got that? Yeah.
I'm Scott Anderson from Barrel. If I find 60 seconds to the last, just a couple of comments on the letter that my colleague Julia Brown had sent in. Great. I will approach the thank you very much again, Scott Anderson. Barrel, colleague on vacation, so she asked me to come out and have been involved with Ruth back in 2017, so somewhat familiar with the issues. So just two thoughts. First, we appreciate that the board is proceeding and having the test step, and obviously you're doing that because you're doing your diligence to make sure that whether it's temporary or permanent, you're checking with on the permitting ahead of time. We obviously think there are issues there, but if I was on the board, I wouldn't take my opinion, I would ask the DEP. So I think everybody's appreciative that you're going to go through that step and communicate with the DEP. I think everybody probably can agree that given the importance of a barge landing to that island and the type of trucks that need to come in and off, that having it land on an unimproved beach is not the best solution. If the DEP says, yeah, go ahead, bring the concrete down, then that becomes an option. If they say, no, there are limits or you can't do that, we think that's an important factor for the board to consider as to whether or not to continue the existing use, which is having significant impacts to the resource there. Given the importance of the trucks and the size of the trucks, having an improved place like Stone Wharf, I think is really important so that it is a functioning and effective facility. So the DEP piece is really important. The only other second thing to consider, for all the reasons we've been talking about over the years, even if the DEP said
that what you could do down at the beach was okay. Obviously, the access to the site is of great concern, and so even setting aside the permanent piece, the board to be thinking from a kind of resource policy standpoint, is Stone Wharf the better option because it's already an improved facility that a lot of people kind of point to as the year-round location. So we would ask the board to continue to consider that and abandon the effort that's happening at Bennett's Cove now. But we appreciate you'll do this in steps. We're grateful for kind of knowing as these items come up on your agenda, and thanks to the town administrator for keeping us in the loop. And we look forward to working with you going forward to find something that works for the residents and works for the island itself. So thanks for your thoughts and attention.
Thank you. All right. We will move on to approve the minutes from September 6th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Yep.
Yep. Items to be placed on this agenda. I have Indian Point,
And bikes.
BTC bike,
Scooter parking.
land, the Grinnell property.
And swap.
Anybody have any? Mark?
Doesn't have to go on the agenda anytime, it's nothing urgent. I think at some point, the select board has one ordinance that they're able to control directly without going back to the town meeting, and that's the parking and traffic ordinance. And I feel that we're still having some issues on the outside with people parking out in the road for one reason or another, obstructing public way, leaving a vehicle down at Bennett's Cove, which is happening right now with a 10 pickup truck. And the board and the ordinance appear to not have much teeth or willingness in the existing ordinance. And in talking to both Chief Joyce from the Sheriff's Department and Deputy Bob Mailman, they may be willing, I don't know how willing they might be, but they may be willing to assist us if we get a little stronger with our ordinance language and willingness to back that up. And the reason I say willingness to back that up, it's easy to make a rule, regulation, or ordinance. It's harder to enforce it and then hold your ground when the yelling and screaming starts, because people don't like rules enforced. I believe we have some traffic and parking ordinance problems, and I think we need to get a little harder with them. Stone Wharf is also a mess at times, and we may have to think about, if people are scoffing our tickets, is collection enough to deter them? Or should we have some way to disable their vehicle, not allow them to do business at the town office, whatever the policy may be? So I'm going to talk about that on a future agenda.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Can I have a motion to move into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 405-6A personnel matters?
So move.
Like,
Thank you all for coming.